Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for joining us. Just let me know if the volumes are either too loud or too soft and stuff like that. So, yeah, as you probably guessed by the title of the video, today we are looking at Kilohearts Multipass. This is like a sort of multi-band modular effects processor, so to speak, similar to kind of Snap Heap, which I've outlined in a video and a couple of videos that are coming up. But the cool thing about this is it kind of allows you to break up your kind of frequency range and apply different effects to each of those frequency ranges. And this is particularly cool for creating those kind of like kick bass breaks that I'm sure we all know in Psytrance. So one of the really, really cool things about this is it's got like LFOs, envelopes, all sorts of stuff built in, as well as the ability to apply like pre and post effects. So you can get like such a wide variety of stuff just out of this plugin itself. So yeah, I figured today we're just going to play with it and see what sort of crazy stuff we can come up with, particularly more on kind of like loops and that kind of thing. Breakdowns. I'm going to try it on a couple of different like synth sounds and percussion sounds and stuff. Because these envelope followers are particularly cool for creating all sorts of weird effects out of percussion sounds. So it looks like we've already got quite a few people in the comments. Hello to everybody. I'm not going to go through all of your names, unfortunately. But yeah, let's dive into the plugin. And I'm going to sort of first start off by showing you guys like what I've kind of built here and the different kind of effects that are applied and all sorts of stuff like that. Anyway, so let's go back to this percussion loop that I've got here. Okay, wait, this is both kick, bass, and percussion that I've kind of exported into a loop. So this is essentially what it sounds like without any processing. Anyway, so I kind of want to dive into like the different effects that I've kind of applied here, and then we can kind of start looking at, creating all sorts of weird stuff. So for those who kind of, actually what I want to do is I should probably just create a new one here. And then I can kind of create it from scratch again. Move that one aside. Mute that one. Cool. Is that visible on the screen? Yes, now it is. Okay. So if you guys have any questions or anything like that, just let me know in the comments. So basically, I started out with one of my favorite kind of effects that I use for these kind of like breakdowns and stuff is this bit crusher. So I'm not sure if I've actually released the video yet. I'm getting a bit caught up in my schedule. But if not, then it's the one coming up soon about like different effects that you can use that you can create using a bit crusher. But like I said, it's one of my favorites for this kind of like break type of thing. So it's cool on like either the entire signal or just on the kind of low end to kind of like create this kind of boxy effect. I'll show you guys the difference between both here. So with something like Bit Crusher, it often kind of really destroys your mids and highs, which, I mean, you may want to do or you may not want to do, depending on the kind of like sound you're wanting to create. So I often find nowadays, since getting Multipass, when I'm doing these kind of breakdowns and stuff, I'll often do other kind of effects using different processes in the mids and highs to create all sorts of variety. when I found previously using like a bit crusher here, then, if I want to create these kind of like percussive elements that layer over it, I've got to create like another channel. So it's not very conducive in terms of, intuitive. And I really enjoy the fact that you can just kind of like drag these around and play with it. You don't necessarily have to put it on the low end, but that's just kind of what I end up doing most of the time with these kind of breakdown loopy things. Oh yeah, another thing is I actually changed the crossover point. I think I set it to around 300 hertz, just because I wanted to kind of affect more of that low mids over here. Anyway, so I also had a filter here. So often, like my sort of go-to trick for these things would be low-pass filter into a bit crusher. But like I said, this gives you the ability to kind of retain the mid-range, because now you're only affecting that low-frequency content. So when you're kind of sweeping in a filter, you can get all sorts of almost build-up-y kind of vibe going on, because I'm not going to explain it. I'm actually just going to do it so you guys can kind of get what I'm talking about. So, once you start layering in like different effects here, it almost like creates these like layers that come in as you build up that filter. So that's a really, really cool technique with this kind of, how can I say, multi-band effects systems, is to create this kind of like low pass filter and sweep it, because then you're creating like, here, for example, only like the bit crusher is coming through. Then as you sweep it up, more of these effects that you create are coming through, and more as you kind of sweep it up. So that's a cool way of creating these kind of like break build-up type of things, which are so popular in Psytrance. Anyway, so you don't necessarily have to use a low pass. I just find it's cool for these, starting from a kind of static, quite sparse break, and then building up to something that involves all of the frequency content. Anyway. So what I did here is I used a comb filter, which is really cool for a kind of like metallic sort of effect. So here what I did is I turned stereo on and then turned this to minus, and then I applied an LFO to this guy. So I actually just want to sweep it around so you guys can kind of hear what the comb filter actually does. So the thing with a comb filter is often I find it kind of like phases the low end a little bit too much, so you get this kind of weird warpy effect. But when you apply it to just the mid-range, it kind of creates this subtle movement, which is really, really cool. So again, this is one of the powers of being able to apply like an effect to just a particular frequency range. So it creates these kind of like, I'm not sure, was that audio playing from the desktop or from my mic? Maybe I should just play it again. So it creates this really cool, like, layered, buildy kind of effect, like I was trying to explain. So here on the high end, it's pretty cool to also use like a bit of distortion, or actually quite a lot of distortion, and then gain it down a bit. Here I find, when distorting a particular frequency range, it like throws off the balance quite a bit. You'll actually see what I'm talking about. I don't want to blow your guys' eardrums off though. Julian Lopez asked if I understand the delay is being applied only by the range of 3 Hertz to 3 kilohertz. Well, yeah, it's 300 Hertz to 3 kilohertz. So basically how it works is it's a multi-band effects processor. This section in the middle here is split up into frequency bands. So each of these effects only applies to that band of frequencies that you kind of select here with these crossover points. So here with the bit crusher, it's only being applied to anything below 300 Hertz. Here with the comb filter and the delay, it's only in the mid-range. And here with the distortion, it's only in the high range. You can actually enable more than 3, which is pretty cool, but that's getting a little bit too advanced. So, I mean, I'm going to leave that kind of up to you guys if you do want to go that in-depth with it. But yeah, all you do is you just enable it by clicking this over here. And then you can set the crossover point. So you've got like almost limitless control to the amount of crazy stuff you can do. Anyway, so here, as you notice, like as I was turning the drive up of the distortion, it was like throwing off the balance because it was obviously distorting just the high frequencies. So I was kind of turning this gain down. But now what happens is if we apply any other effects here, those are going to be gained down as well. So here we can actually just apply one of these gain plugins, and I'm actually just going to turn it down the amount that I turned that down. And then that can go back to default. And then let's play around with this distortion a little bit. So then here I've applied a little bit of reverb to the highs as well, because obviously don't want to like reverb my bass and all sorts of stuff like that. I guess it's just a break, so it wouldn't really be all that of a big deal. So here also we can apply some post effects. So that's now, after our little effects chain that we've created here. So I like to create like a little bit of high pass filter on this side, just to, cut out some of the like low end boominess that's going on right now. Often in this type of thing, with these kind of like breakdowns, build-ups and stuff like that, I kind of want there to be not too much sub and bass content, so that when like the bass actually kicks in again, you kind of feel that energy a lot better, I guess, if that makes sense. So I'll often apply a little bit of high pass cutoff onto the end of this like effects chain. So check this out. The Bitcrasher is kind of adding quite a little bit of, or quite a lot of like aliasing over there, which kind of sounds good, but I kind of want to tone it down a little bit. So I'm putting a low pass filter here with a very low Q factor, just to kind of like slowly roll off the high ends, just so it doesn't clash too much with the kind of rhythmic content that's happening over here. So I mean, the possibilities are endless within the plugin. You can do all sorts of crazy things. You can hold control and duplicate these, create all sorts of stuff. Anyway, yeah. So then here I created a filter, a macro onto this filter just to sweep it, during the automation, or just to play around with it to create all sorts of different sweeps and stuff like that. We can actually just record this in. This Haas effect is really, really cool. It creates that kind of like almost phasey kind of vibe, but you can control how much kind of phase is happening. The one thing though is that there's no mix control or like on off, so you can't link a macro or control the automation of it on or off, which I guess I could kind of put it onto one of the post effects and then mix it, like that, but then I would have to sacrifice this guy. So that'll be cool for an update. Oh, there go the dogs again. Actually going to save this preset and put it onto my Patreon for all my $5 supporters. It's simple, but I think it's pretty cool. Quickly create those kind of like Psytrance-y kind of breaks. So yeah, I think that's what I'll call it. That's strange. The init patch takes it back to something that's different to how it was when you start up the plugin. Interesting. Okay, let me just line this back up on the screen. Cool. Okay, let's get into something a bit different. I'm actually going to make a quick bathroom run. What I'll do is I'll play you guys the track, start to finish. I should have actually bounced out what I had there before changing. Anyway, doesn't matter. Not a biggie. I actually don't like that part so much. I think what we can do is let's make like a synth variation here instead of this, using something that we've already got, and like use multipass to create some new interesting effects and sort of a new kind of variation on that synth. I think this is the one that I was really enjoying. Hey, to anybody who's just joining us now, multipass, that's exactly what we're doing. For anyone who doesn't get the reference, it's from one of the greatest movies of all times. The movie is called The Fifth Element, and yeah, it's old, but it's an absolute classic, brilliant. It's from another time, let's just say. The snake feature. Yes, I almost forgot. That's like the best part about this plugin. It's a mini game, so you basically play Snake. But I could do that for hours, so I'm not going to get too in depth with that feature. It's a little bit advanced, so anyway. Like a lot of their plugins, I'm not sure if you saw my video on Phase Plant as well. They've got Space Invaders built in there as well, so just a little added extra to waste time instead of getting to creating music. Love it. So this is really cool because, like I was explaining earlier, because you've got like individual control over the frequency bands and you can apply different effects to them. I find, using something like a bandpass filter, you're often sacrificing your lows and your highs for that kind of like mid-range effect that you're trying to create. So here, when applying like a bandpass filter to just the mid-range, then you've got the ability to apply all sorts of other effects to the other bands, which is really, really cool. So, okay, before I get too carried away there, I don't know if you guys picked up what was happening there. The sample and hold in this LFO is triggered by a gate over here, and that's dependent on the actual audio input. So that's very cool. You can kind of have it set so that, like, in the actual the source sample sound that I bounced from the synth, it kind of sweeps from with a low pass filter from low to high, and you can kind of use this gate to only trigger that sample and hold at certain points, when it sweeps high and it kind of hits that gate threshold. So here what I'm trying to do is use this kind of filter to carve out like the very low frequencies, and then here in this band between whatever's left and about 430 hertz or so, we can actually edit that depending. I'm trying to kind of really distort it to bring out the kind of like acidy kind of character from the sound. So this saturator is really, really cool for doing that type of thing. Thank you, 7177. I'm glad you caught the stream. Thanks for the comment. I really appreciate that. This resonator effect is actually really cool for kind of like a resynthesis kind of thing. But you have to remember to set it to the key of your track, or at least a relevant key to the track that you're working in. I like to couple this with something like a trance gate, but what I'm going to do is I actually want to put the trance gate on the post effects to kind of process everything together. But I think here what could be cool is something like reverb and maybe like even a filter like before the reverb to kind of like sweep that synthy sound that we've kind of created with this resonator effect. We can even create like a sort of pluck sound out of it. I'm just going to mute this filter over here and put another one on just for the purpose of a quick explanation. If we use this kind of envelope follower here and apply this, it's kind of like basic, synth sound design kind of stuff. But the cool thing here is, again, you've got ability to just like apply it to effects and all sorts of stuff, to drum sounds or anything really. And you've got a lot of control as to, how this envelope plays out. So Nigma is asking, I always have trouble with writing breaks. What's your tip on that? Well, my tip is generally just bounce a bunch of stuff out from your project and just apply a ton of effects. And, something like multipass, obviously I'm explaining it this entire video, but something like this is super cool for doing so because you've got very much control over a lot of the different, frequency ranges and stuff. So you're kind of, how can I say, for those indecisive moments with like synth sounds and stuff, I often find that's where the creative block kind of hits. When I have something that's already bounced to a loop, there's only a certain point that I can kind of fall back to. So then I'll focus in on particular plugins and create these kind of interesting effects and stuff using like the stuff within that kind of plugin, if that makes sense. So yeah, I hope that kind of outlines it for you. But also do it with a kick and bass. Go back to the beginning of the video if you haven't been watching the entire time. But I did do some of these kind of effects and stuff on an actual kick and bass and percussion loop. That's quite a cool way of creating those kind of psytrance-y breakdowns and build-ups and that kind of thing. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Cool. I like what it did to that synth. It sounded fantastic. Let's bounce out a percussion loop and play around with some effects on that. Probably don't want the crash in this loop. I think it's pretty simple, so we probably only have to grab a small amount. And I'm going to export. Whenever I'm streaming or recording videos, the exporting takes ages, even for little small snippets like that. Cool. Must remember to re-enable that. So we can actually just go to a part now, which is just kick and bass, and play around with some effects, some multipass on this percussion loop that we've created. So this is really cool that it's got this readout here of the spectrum spectrum content, so you can kind of see where you want to drop these little doodads or whatever, these readouts, and then knowing, for example, like when you see how that kind of thing plays, you can see, okay, the snare is kind of like hitting in that part, so we can do like interesting things like distort that part, for example, or that part or something. You just play around with a couple of different things here. Also want to dive into more envelope stuff here as well. So using a delay with a kind of like fairly high mix and then, tweaking the feedback using like an envelope shape or something like that is a very cool way of creating these kind of like almost glitchy kind of effects. I wish you could kind of get the timing of the sync a little bit faster, but I can't complain. Still sounds pretty good. You could calculate it with the milliseconds and just punch it in over there. I really, oh, excuse me. I really enjoy using these kind of sort of techniques on percussion loops and stuff like that, especially like building it up to these main sections, because it's always made up of stuff that's like rhythmically correlates to like the material that's coming in the break, if that makes sense. So, for example, like we use that envelope follower to kind of like get those triggers and create all sorts of effects around that. And then it kind of like builds up and builds up. It's got a bit like of a different kind of varying effect, but obviously we want that because we don't want to just layer the same sound over and over again. But it's made up of something that rhythmically correlates to the actual rhythm in the track. So it helps to like incorporate like when the next kind of like percussion section comes in and stuff. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, that's kind of what I've done here with these the automation. It's always before like a main sort of percussion section. You probably can't see because it's not very zoomed in, but yeah, anyway. I need to get a quick refill and bathroom run. I'm going to let it play while I do so. I'm probably going to be calling it a day after, unless you guys have any kind of anything you want me to look at within the plugin, or anything like else within the project you want me to try process through the plugin, and we can play around with a couple of these effects. What I actually want to do is, let me open this up, and I'm just going to open this, and then so you guys can see like all these effects, and just like name some in the comments if you want to hear like what these kind of sound like. I'm going to quickly make a bathroom run. Cool. I think what I'm going to do is just make a couple of variations here on this kind of kick bass percussion group thing that we did. We'll maybe split it into some more bands. Let's maybe get crazy with it. I said I'm not going to, but here we go. I'm just going to get experimental with it, so it might end up sounding absolute rubbish, but who knows? Who knows what might happen? It's got a bit of that Beastie Boys intergalactic vibe going on there in the mid range. Track ID. It doesn't actually have a name yet. I've got to go to the folder of names and pick one that fits. But it's the one that I actually sent like the raw version to the little group. So I think you have heard like the very rawest form of it. So now I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm just like overproducing it. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, I think I'm going to call it a day very soon. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to get any last minute questions in while I play around a bit here. Thanks, Paul. That means a lot. I know some of them say like tal baseline, for example, but this one is phase plant, this one is phase plant, this one is phase plant, this one is phase plant. This one is serum. Two of them are serum, and the rest is phase plant. And then the last one here is tal baseline, I believe. Okay, no, there's two tal baselines. So it's pretty much tal baseline, one serum or two serums, and the rest is phase plant. I just answered the question that Rizla just asked. There's a couple of like stabs and stuff. Actually, no, wait, I've muted all of those that are recorded in from the 303. They just didn't quite fit this particular kind of thing I was going for. I think the bass was actually recorded off the 303 though. But yeah, you can't overdo that one. Rizla, it's mainly phase plant. It's actually the same guys who do this plugin that I'm playing around with today, Multipass, Kilohearts. Awesome plugin. Sound quality is incredible. It's super user-friendly. Great interface, just like this one. It's also a very kind of like modular kind of system, but in terms of like the actual generator, I did a whole video on that if you want to go check that out. I think I'm going to start calling it a day. Let me just see if there's any more. That part was awesome. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who was saying that these synths are sounding awesome. Thank you. It's like he does it every day. I pretty much do. Well, at least I try to put a couple of hours into something productive musically every day. If it's not, sitting behind a DAW, actually creating music, I'll sit with a pen and paper and just like write down ideas or something like that. And you'll often find that your kind of most creative ideas come from when you're not sitting behind the DAW, because often, we like to kind of go into these motions of doing the same things on a lot of different projects. I'm probably guilty of creating these kind of workflows for a lot of people, with my videos and stuff like that. But I feel that, even if you're not putting the hours every day into, just sitting behind a DAW and doing it, if it's like playing a bit of guitar or, something productive musically, I think that's definitely going to help. Obviously, this is pretty much, I wouldn't say my full-time job. I've got various different things that I do, but I do dedicate a lot of my time every day to creating videos and that kind of thing. So I guess that does help, because I can, I'm fortunate enough to be able to put so much time into it. But even before I kind of went, freelance and all sorts, even working at a job, I still tried to, sneak a couple of sessions on the laptop here and there at work and all sorts of stuff like that. So yeah, definitely just put in, even if it's like in your lunch break or something, just, watch tutorials. I'm sure most of you actually just, most of you do because you're watching my videos. But yeah, even if it's just something productive every day, keep your mind on it, so that when you do step into the studio, these decisions are already made. It's not like, what do I have to do now? Or what do I have to do now? It's just, okay, out comes the notebook. These are the ideas that I had during the week. So that definitely helps. Thank you for your tutorials. I use them in Reason. Awesome. That's great. I used Reason very long ago. I think it was like Reason 2 or 3, and it was great back then. But I think now there's so many options. I've kind of used Cubase for so long. I kind of just want to stick with what I know, because I think once you get past that initial couple of years of learning a DAW, and you can do the things you need to do, most of them are all pretty much the same. Obviously, each one has their kind of pros and cons. But, it's about what you're going to do with it in the end. So, I mean, if you're going to warp audio in certain ways in one DAW and another one doesn't offer you that kind of capabilities, then it's the obvious choice, I wish you used FL Studio. Well, that's actually the DAW I started on, and I still got very, very much respect to FL Studio. Because I don't think I would be as into music production if it weren't for how easy the program is to actually learn. But unfortunately, me and FL Studio parted ways very, very many years ago. And I think if you use a lot of the VSTs that I show in my videos, the kind of sounds and kind of how can I say, the workflow and the theory can be applied to a lot of the kind of stuff. I guess you may just need one or two other tutorials for people using FL to explain like a couple of differences between the two. But I may do a video on FL Studio in the future and talk about a couple of differences and stuff like that. But I haven't invested in the plugin. I haven't invested in the software, so I'm not going to do it anytime soon. Jasper is asking, it looks like I bounced down a lot of MIDI tracks during the process. Yeah, especially because when I'm streaming and when I'm recording videos, I mean, you can see my CPU's not loving me at the moment. I try to just keep things clean, but also because it kind of removes the indecisiveness which a lot of the time, I kind of get stuck in the kind of like loop. Once you've bounced it down, there's only so much you can do to it. You can either take it away or leave it there, or apply effects like, multipass and stuff like that. Cool. So, yeah, I think I'm going to call it a day. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. Yeah, if you enjoyed this, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will hopefully see you guys next